Rumors spread about the baby born with a tail. Some called him cursed, monkey boy, or evil child. Ndidi had vowed to make everyone in the village pay for such unfair treatment they did to her mother with his last breath. But why was I born this way, Mama? Why me? Never forget who you are, Kelechi. You are my precious son, and the ancestors' chosen one. Your tale makes you unique and special. Take some men tonight to scout their defenses, he ordered. We will attack in 2 days. Enough, he said. For our people's good, the boy, Kelechi, must leave. Stay kind, stay vigilant, and remember all I've taught you. A warrior controls his power. He does not let anger control him. I see greatness in Kelechi. He bears more than just a tale. He carries our ancestors' hopes. Evil child, he's brought a curse upon us all. Your son is an abomination. Our village has suffered long enough under his curse. He must leave now. This has been passed down in my family for generations. It will protect you. Keep it close. Oh, my son, we will find you someday. Go, that is where you belong. Do not return, or you will be stoned. This is madness. You will regret this. The boy is not what is causing our problems. Held the pendant, comforted by its warmth. He would make it through this night like his mom said, and one day he would go back home. With a cry, Kelechi sprinted into the shadows of the trees. He ran until his legs burned and his lungs screamed for air. Finally, he collapsed beneath a rocky overhang, breathing hard. Suddenly, he heard a faint voice calling his name. Kelechi, Kelechi, wake up. Kelechi, Kelechi, wake up. He opened his eyes slowly. He blinked a few times as the sun's rays peeked through the trees above. For a moment, he felt confused and didn't know his location or how long he had been there. His mind flashed back to the last thing he could recall, falling to the ground, totally drained in the middle of the wild forest during a heavy downpour. This happened after his people forced him out of his village. Kelechi's eyesight slowly came into focus as he found himself resting on a mat made of woven grass in a little open space in the woods. Just a few steps away, a small flame flickered and crackled, sending wisps of smoke into the moist air. Beside the fire, an elderly man sat cross-legged. He had a beard and hair as white as snow. He was tending the flames with a stick, but he looked up when he noticed Kelechi staring at him. "Ah, you're finally awake," the old man said, his voice raspy but kind. "You've had quite an ordeal, haven't you?" With a groan of pain, Kelechi lifted himself up from the ground. His muscles felt sore and stiff. "Where am I?" he asked warily. "Who are you? What is this place?" The old man smiled, eyes twinkling. So many questions. "Fear not, all will be answered in time," said the old man. "My name is Uzoma. I found you passed out and brought you to my hut to recover." He pointed at a small straw hut that could be barely seen through the trees. Uzoma smiled and handed Kelechi some food. "You must be wondering why I brought you here." Kelechi looked at him with a puzzled expression. "Yes, I am. What's your reason?" "I couldn't let you die, of course," Uzoma said with a laugh. "Here, eat this. It will help you regain your energy." He passed a wooden dish to Kelechi that had a tasty soup in it. Kelechi took it with doubt, but then he ate it all up very fast. When he finished the soup, he felt more alive and less tired. "I appreciate your kindness," he said gratefully, returning the bowl. "You have done me a great favor. However, I must go now. My family must be worried." Uzoma shook his head. "I'm afraid you won't be going anywhere tonight. The jungle is dangerous after dark. You must rest here until morning." His tone left no room for argument. Uzoma's offer of shelter made Kelechi nervous. He agreed with the old man that he couldn't survive the jungle by himself in the dark, but he didn't trust him either. However, he had no other option than to stay with him. Uzoma broke the silence after a while. The fire was the only thing making noise, crackling softly. "Kelechi, you have a great destiny ahead of you," he said solemnly. "Your tale marks you as someone special. You have an important purpose. You are not the cursed boy from Udo. Never!" Kelechi gasped in shock. How did this stranger know his name, or about his tale, or where he was coming from? He glanced down self-consciously at the long dark tail curled around his waist. Uzoma seemed to read his thoughts. "All will become clear with time. For now, just know that I am here to guide you, Kelechi. The ancestors have sent me to help you understand your purpose and power." A strange sensation washed over Kelechi, and suddenly vivid images flickered before his eyes, or perhaps it was a vision granted by the ancestors. He found himself transported back to the day of his birth, witnessing his mother Ngozi cradling him as an infant, her fingers tracing the soft fur of his newborn tail. Ajani stood beside them, his expression a mix of pride and concern. The scene shifted, and Kelechi saw Mama Decay, the village elder, approach his parents' hut. "This child is blessed by the ancestors," she proclaimed, her voice resonating with ancient wisdom. "He bears a sacred mark, a sign that he is the one foretold in the prophecy, the one destined to save our village from a great calamity." Kelechi's parents looked at each other in confusion, but Mama Decay didn't let that stop her. "Treat him well, for his path will be difficult, but his purpose is true. When the time comes, a guide will appear to set him on his journey." As the vision faded, Uzoma's words echoed deeper within Kelechi's mind. The old man was the guide Mama Decay had spoken of, sent to unlock the potential within Kelechi and prepare him for his foretold destiny. Uzoma revealed glimpses of a great destiny ahead for Kelechi, one that would save his village. "Oh, so the people of Udo believed they were condemning you to a miserable fate, but they were wrong. They have brought you to the right place, where you will discover more about yourself and your destiny. You should get some rest," Uzoma said. He settled on his own mat and closed his eyes. Kelechi lay back slowly, watching the flickering fire flames and listening to the sounds of the jungle night. He had more questions than ever. His curiosity was unsatisfied, but his exhaustion overcame him. Soon he slipped into a deep, dreamless sleep. Kelechi woke up to find the mysterious old man gone. There was no sign of him, except for a cryptic note. "It is time. You will know what to do." Kelechi rubbed his eyes in disbelief. He was still in the jungle with his burlap sack and a full stomach, but his mind was full of questions. Was it a vision? He had heard of ancestors speaking through dreams, but he had never experienced it himself. He felt alone and confused. As he sat beside his small fire, memories returned in flashes. The angry villagers and their cruel acts towards him. His parents' scared and hopeless faces, running through the dense jungle alone in fear. Tears pricked his eyes, but he blinked them away. Out of anger, Kelechi pulled out the sharp knife he had crafted from a broken spearhead. He stared at the blade, then at his tail, twitching restlessly behind him. If he cut it off, he could return to the village, blend in, be normal. No more stares, no more whispers, no more monkey boy. Kelechi held his tail and extended it, placing the knife at the point where his fur ended and his skin began. He trembled. The metal felt like it was cutting him, even though he had not pressed it down yet. Kelechi's tail whipped out of his grasp, flinging the knife into the bushes. His heart raced as he gasped. He tried to grab the knife, but his tail struck once more, pushing it farther out of reach. It was as if his tail had a mind of its own, refusing to be cut, to be denied. Kelechi slumped back, confused and frustrated. "Why won't you let me do this?" he whispered to his tail, feeling foolish. "Don't you understand? Without you, I could go home. I could be accepted." But even as he said the words, Kelechi knew they weren't true. The prejudice and fear in the villagers' hearts wouldn't disappear just because his tail did. And cutting it off would mean rejecting a part of himself, a part that had kept him alive out here. Kelechi thought of his mother's words, her unwavering belief that his tail was a gift, not a curse. He thought of his mysterious mentor, Uzoma, urging him to embrace his uniqueness and fulfill his destiny. Slowly, Kelechi's fingers uncurled from around his tail. "No," he said softly, his voice gaining strength. "No, I won't cut you off. You're a part of me. And if I'm going to save my village, I need to be whole. I need to be me. Yes, you're now my new friend. I need to name you. I will call you Odudu." I think that's perfect. From that moment on, Kelechi no longer saw his tail as a hindrance or a source of shame. Instead, it became a symbol of his identity, his strength, and his purpose. He would return to Udo not as a boy seeking acceptance, but as a young man ready to claim his destiny. Kelechi had no option left but to embrace and accept his new home, the jungle. He carried himself up and continued his journey. Over the following weeks and months, Kelechi faced a harsh struggle for survival in the wilderness over the next weeks and months. He used the jungle resources to make tools and shelter, applying the skills his father had taught him. Kelechi searched for plants he could eat, set traps for small prey, and gathered rainwater for drinking. His tail, which the villagers had despised, was very useful. An extra limb to swing from trees, grab fruits, maintain balance. Gradually, Kelechi's muscles grew stronger, his senses sharper, his bond with nature deeper. The special necklace from Kelechi's mother was a constant comfort. Whenever danger drew close, a hungry predator or violent storm, the stone pendant would glow faintly, pulse with soothing energy, giving Kelechi the strength to endure. It made him feel connected to his parents, even far away. Udo village went on with its usual routines, but everyone missed the boy. Ngozi and Ajani felt empty without their son. They were always sad and anxious. Every night, Ngozi sobbed in Ajani's embrace until she fell asleep. But they never gave up hope, asking the ancestors every day to take care of their beloved boy. Sometimes, Ngozi would touch her neck where her precious necklace used to be, and wish that it was shielding Kelechi from harm. The peaceful night in Udo village was shattered by the sounds of war and metal. Ndidi and his raiders attacked the village without warning, their dark shapes looming in the moonlight. The houses that used to be filled with joy and warmth now quaked with fear. Villagers screamed, hugging their children as the bandits approached. They tried to escape the ruthless invaders who had conquered Udo many times. The bandits showed no mercy, stealing and burning everything they could find. With his spear in hand and a fierce resolve, Ajani led the community's defense against the bandits. He shouted orders amid the turmoil, inspiring the men to resist. But the attackers were relentless and outnumbered them. Yet for every bandit that fell, 2 more seemed to take their place. "Stand firm," Ajani shouted as he blocked a bandit's attack. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear but from rage at the sight of his village being torn apart. Ndidi's men captured whoever they could as the villagers ran away in fear. Ajani resisted bravely, swinging his staff and hitting their heads, but he could not match their numbers. Ajani was overwhelmed, disarmed, and beaten to the ground by the relentless bandits. He saw with horror how they tied up Ngozi and took her away, her cries piercing his heart. "Kelechi," she cried desperately before the bandits hauled her away. "Find us, my son. You must save us." Ajani roared, struggling against the men restraining him, but it was no use. He could only watch, helpless, as his wife and other women from Udo were dragged back towards the jungle, captives of the merciless Ndidi. The women screamed as they were herded like cattle into the darkness of the jungle, captives to be ransomed or worse. Ndidi's latest raid had left Udo village devastated. Homes were ransacked, livestock stolen, and several young women carried off as captives. The bandits had attacked with ruthless efficiency, overwhelming the meager village defenses. As the sun rose over Udo village, the scene was one of sadness and ruin. Charred buildings stood like solemn guards, overlooking people filled with deep distress. Husbands and fathers cried openly for their lost wives and daughters. Mothers held their remaining children tightly, gripped by intense fear. Families of the kidnapped women gathered at Chief Okenwa's hut, weeping. With sorrow and anger written on their faces, they pleaded for action, asked for hope, something to overcome the helplessness that had surrounded them. With a hollow and uncertain look in his eyes, Chief Okenwa faced his people. He hid his despair and spoke with feigned confidence. "We will get our loved ones back," he vowed. "I assure you that we will strengthen our defenses and prevent this from ever happening again." Whispers spread among the crowd. Some voiced doubts while others held desperately to his words. Inside, Okenwa felt a pang of despair. He knew promises were empty and had no backing. Privately, Okenwa confessed to the elders that he had no idea how to recover their people from the bandits' clutches. The village guards were no match for Ndidi's gang. Desperation and despair infected the very air of Udo. Udo village faced a double crisis: raids from enemies and drought from the sky. Ever since Kelechi was exiled, Udo village had not received a single drop of rain. The crops dried up, the cattle wasted away, and a silent plague infected both the young and the old. As the elders argued heatedly in the council meetings, they struggled to find any viable solutions. The chief's forehead was creased with worry. A silent guilt haunted every discussion. "Perhaps we made a mistake," one elder finally whispered softly. "The boy, Kelechi, he did not deserve to be banished. We cast him out unjustly." Murmurs of agreement stirred among them, a slow realization that perhaps they had been wrong to blame an innocent child for their misfortunes. Some villagers wondered aloud if banishing Kelechi had brought a curse upon them rather than appeasing the gods. Even those who had cried loudest for the boy's exile now felt twinges of regret. The people of Udo had lost their faith. They were blinded by their present woes and could not glimpse the promise of a better future. They did not know that Kelechi was getting closer every day, honing his skills in the jungle to prepare for his fate. Nor could they foresee the bandit king in his mountain lair, sharpening his weapons and plotting his next attack. Ndidi's hatred of Udo had curdled over the years into a dark obsession. Soon, he would unleash his fury upon the village in a final act of vengeance. But that battle was yet to come. For now, Udo village struggled on, praying for some miracle of deliverance. In his secret hideout in the heart of the jungle, Ndidi nursed his hatred. He could not forget how Udo village had killed his mother. He sought to ease his pain by taking revenge, not by offering mercy. "They took away my mother and I in return. Take their women, daughters, wife. How does it feel now? I will show them what it means to live without a mother." Ndidi smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment. Ajani sat alone in the empty hut, his head in his hands. Everything he had built, everything he loved, had been ripped away in an instant. First his son, cast out by his own people, and now his beloved wife stolen by raiders in the night. The weight of his failure was crushing. He should have protected them. He should have stopped the mob from exiling his innocent boy. He should have stood watch to keep Ngozi safe. But he had been powerless to prevent either tragedy. Some warrior he was. Ajani stared at the floor, tears dripping down his cheeks. His family was shattered, and he didn't know how to begin picking up the pieces. He felt an intense anger burning inside him. He needed to act quickly. In the jungle, Kelechi shot upright, clutching the pendant around his neck. It pulsed with energy, filling his mind with visions of his mother's frightened face. His heart clenched. Somehow he knew his village was in trouble once more. Leaping to his feet, Kelechi raced through the trees, following an instinctive pull. He had to get back to Udo, back to his family. They needed him now more than ever. Even though he felt strongly that he should do something, uncertainty ate at him, murmuring that he was not prepared yet to confront the fate that called him. In the jungle, Ndidi and his bandits celebrated their recent raid with loud laughter. They drank the beer they had stolen and warmed themselves by a roaring fire, their faces flushed with drunkenness. Ndidi sat on a makeshift throne of vines and bamboo, listening to his followers boast about the night's spoils. Trapped in a bamboo cage, Ngozi and the other women listened to their captors' laughter and drunken talk outside. Through the gaps in the bars, Ngozi heard their crude jokes and their plans for them, which filled them with terror. They held each other and sobbed quietly, afraid to make any noise. Ngozi prayed silently for her son to come and rescue them, but she did not dare to speak her hope aloud, lest she anger their kidnappers. Kelechi was left in his own doubtful thoughts. He wandered around the jungle, not knowing what to do or which next step to take. He knew he wasn't ready to return to Udo. In his silent thought, he said, "Don't worry, Mama and Baba. I will come and get you soon. It won't be long. I know and feel it." He asked his Odudu, "What do you think?" while smiling. Kelechi closed his eyes as the pendant pulsed warmly against his chest. Visions swirled before him. Uzoma appeared again, placing a hand on Kelechi's shoulder. "You have great power within you, young one, if only you can find it," Uzoma said. "Your gifts make you special, but they alone don't define your destiny. It is what lies in your heart that matters most." Kelechi saw Uzoma standing before him, regarding him with knowing eyes. "Your Odudu can be a weapon, but only if wielded with wisdom," Uzoma continued. "Come here, I will show you," Uzoma commanded. They stood within the confines of the dark trees around them. Kelechi saw himself training under the old man's guidance, learning to wield his tail as a weapon. "Watch," Uzoma instructed, lifting a rough staff. He swung it toward Kelechi with deceptive speed. Kelechi was supposed to block it with his tail, but it caught him off guard, landing him to the floor, weak. "Come on, boy. Remember, skill comes from practice. Strength comes from perseverance, but true power comes from compassion. Always be alert of your surroundings. Let's try again." Uzoma swung the staff in a different direction, more precise this time. Kelechi focused on the trainings from his father, Ajani. He said to himself, "Let's do this, my Odudu." He rose up. Kelechi reacted on instinct and spun around, swinging his tail to block the strike. His fur and muscle absorbed the impact of the staff, stopping its momentum. Uzoma smiled faintly. "Good. Again." They practiced until Kelechi's brow dripped with sweat and his tail swung with accuracy and strength. Uzoma spoke little during their practice, but his words were valuable lessons that Kelechi absorbed eagerly. Uzoma's teachings built upon the foundation Ajani had laid. Kelechi's father had trained him in traditional combat, honing his strength and reflexes. Now, Uzoma showed him how to integrate his unique abilities seamlessly. transforming his tail from a liability into a formidable weapon. With this knowledge, you can even do more. Practice till you perfect it and unleash the full power of your Odudu. Well done, boy. Uzoma turned to leave. Kelechi exclaimed with wide eyes opened. Does this mean I am ready to go save my people? Kelechi asked in desperation. Uzoma replied, You have your father's power and your mother's spirit. Every challenge is a lesson waiting to be understood. Uzoma disappeared. As the visions faded, Kelechi opened his eyes, feeling a newfound sense of purpose and confidence. He knew his destiny was intertwined with the fate of his village, and he was determined to rise to the challenge. But the reply from Uzoma was not what he expected, making him to wonder even more. Does his answer mean, I am ready? Feeling lost and disoriented, Ajani stood at the edge of the jungle. He could not tell where to go. The trees seemed identical, the paths twisted and turned unpredictably. Frustration and helplessness battled inside him as he clenched his fists. Ajani's longing for his family was stronger than the vast distance that separated them. He braved the jungle, a daunting barrier, with unwavering determination. He had ventured into the wilderness, driven by hope, but now he confronted the true difficulty of his quest. He would not give up. He paused, closing his eyes to steady his breathing. I must find my family at all cost, he whispered into the silence. Back in Udo, the village chief walked back and forth in his palace, restless and worried. He commanded his men to strengthen the defenses. At every entrance, guards stood ready with spears and shields. The chief looked around fearfully, as though the bandits could appear at any moment. The chief was determined to protect what power he had left amidst the chaos. The villagers were in a frenzy outside. The news of the kidnapping raced through the crowd, sparking terror and gossip. Some sought solace in each other's arms, while some debated angrily about the next course of action. They regretted ignoring Mama Decay's warnings. They wished they had treated Kelechi with kindness. They thought, things were falling apart for the people who used to be so lively. They had been through a lot of bad stuff lately, and it was taking a toll on their bonds. They wished with all their hearts that someone brave and strong would show up and help them out of this mess. Kelechi felt at home in the jungle, where he enjoyed its music and its creatures. He was alone, but he did not mind. He did not have to face the mean villagers who blamed him for everything. He only wished he could see his parents again. He honed his craft, following Uzoma's teachings, and challenged himself every day. His tail was his friend, a weapon that responded to his every command. One day, while Kelechi was practicing his skills, he heard a noise in the bushes. A strange animal ran past him with a frantic speed. Out of curiosity, Kelechi felt a surge of interest and chased after it. The animal led him further into parts of the forest he hadn't seen much of before. It moved so rapidly that it pushed Kelechi to his limits as he tried to keep up. He followed an irresistible urge deeper into the jungle, where the dense foliage blocked out most of the sun. Ahead, he saw a glimmer of light breaking through the dimness, a flickering flame in the far-off clearing, but he had lost track of the animal. The strange animal had vanished, its purpose fulfilled, but Kelechi knew that its appearance had been no mere coincidence. It had guided him here for a reason. As Kelechi drew closer, he heard whispers over the fire's roar. He moved carefully, blending in with the darkness as he got closer to the source of the conversation. That was when he caught sights and sounds of the bandit raiders, making his blood turn to ice in his veins. Ndidi and his men, the very same villains that had tormented his village for years. As Kelechi kept watching, his mind drifted back to the story his mother had once told him about Ndidi's origins. How Udo cruelly treated Ndidi's mother, Chika, when she became pregnant out of wedlock. Kelechi could only imagine the hardships Ndidi and Chika had endured, scraping a life together in the jungle. He could relate to Ndidi's situation, as he has also been cruelly cast into the jungle. He couldn't help but feel a pang of pity for the bandit leader. Kelechi observed and paid attention. His sharp hearing and sight, made better from being in the jungle, let him overhear parts of what the criminals wanted to do. He became more and more worried as he found out they were plotting to attack Udo once more and destroy it completely. Kelechi felt sick to his stomach as he listened to Ndidi talk to the other bandits. Ndidi sounded mean and evil as he asked them, "What's a village without a king?" Ndidi seemed excited and happy about his nasty plan to kidnap Chief Okenwa and take over Udo village. Ndidi's cruel laughter even made Kelechi scared to the core. He could tell Ndidi couldn't wait to grab the chief and control whatever was left of the village after he ruined it. The rest of the gang moved closer, excited to listen to the scheme their boss had crafted. The robbers laughed loudly and celebrated, thrilled by the idea of taking complete control over the village. Kelechi's heart beat faster as he took in their evil plans. He refused to allow this to occur. He would not permit these raiders to destroy his village and make prisoners of its inhabitants. Kelechi saw the gang had kidnapped some women from Udo, which even made him feel sick to his stomach. They were crowded into a rough cage, their cheeks wet from crying and their eyes filled with hopelessness. As he looked closer, he spotted a familiar face among the prisoners. It was his very own mother, Ngozi. "Mama," Kelechi whispered, his voice catching in his throat. A wave of fear and confusion washed over him. What had happened to his father? How had his mother ended up in the clutches of these ruthless bandits? Kelechi knew he had to act fast. Every moment he delayed, his mother and the other captives were in greater danger. His eyes scanned the bandits around the fire and the captives in the cage. Formulating a plan, Kelechi calculated the risks and potential obstacles. He would have the element of surprise, but Ndidi's men were numerous and well-armed. A poorly executed attempt at rescue could prove disastrous, not only for himself, but for the prisoners as well. Time seemed to slow as Kelechi's mind raced, weighing his options. He could try to create a diversion, drawing the bandits away from the cage and giving him a window to free the captives. Or perhaps a stealthy approach, using the cover of darkness to slip in and silently release them, relying on his newly honed skills to evade detection. Each scenario played out in his mind, every variable considered, every potential pitfall accounted for. But with each passing moment, the sense of urgency mounted, like a coiled serpent ready to strike. Kelechi's gaze fell upon his mother, Ngozi, huddled among the other prisoners. Her face was etched with fear and despair, but in her eyes he saw a glimmer of hope, a silent plea for her son to be her family's salvation. It was that look that solidified Kelechi's resolve. He would not fail her, not again. Summoning every ounce of courage and determination, Kelechi readied himself to act. His tail twitched with anticipation, coiled like a spring, ready to unleash its full power. This was the moment he had been preparing for, the test of his newfound abilities and his true destiny. He took a deep breath, pushing aside any lingering doubts or fears. He was the chosen one, the boy with the prophetic tale, and it was time to embrace his calling. With one final glance at his mother's hopeful face, Kelechi stepped out of the shadows, ready to confront Ndidi and his men, ready to fight for the freedom of his loved ones and his village. But just as he was about to make his move, someone suddenly grabbed him from behind, covering his mouth and preventing him from making any noise. He fought against the stronghold, his tail whipping back and forth frantically, but the person would not let go. Kelechi's eyes widened in shock and terror as he was violently yanked backward into the dense foliage, his carefully laid plans failing in an instant. Had the bandits found him? Was he now a prisoner too, unable to rescue his mother and the other captives from his village? Was this where it all ends? His heart kept racing in fear.